Luke chapter 4, verses 18 to 19. The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Amen. These words are still true of Jesus and embodied through each one of us who form his body, the church. The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor.
Is this the mic? That's great. I also have a pretty loud voice, so I could just yell. Can y'all hear me okay? Awesome. Good morning, church. Hi. Morning. So my name's Brianna Weidman. For those of you who don't know me, my husband Zach and I, we've been going to Radiant City for the last 4 years. It was actually this weekend, 3 years ago, that Gord married us in my parents' backyard. So lots of good memories this weekend. So yeah, a little bit about me. Since graduating university in 2020, I was kind of unintentionally thrust into the world of homelessness in our community. So when I graduated, April 2020 was a weird time for the world, but our shelter system was essentially like exploding. And so they were hiring a bunch of people. And so I got a job at the House Friendship Men's Shelter, and I was there for a year and a half before I got to my current job with the Kitchener Downtown Community Health Center. It's in the Tannery building. So what I do now, I work on an outreach team that brings primary care to homeless people. So essentially like a family doctor for people who don't have family doctors. We run that clinic. We try and provide low barrier service because people who are homeless don't always have phones. They can't make appointment times well. We kind of just go with the flow and say whoever shows up the day we're there. My role on the team, I'm not a healthcare professional. I don't really like blood or needles. But they call me an outreach admin assistant person / kind of do everything as needed. I do kind of managing people's appointments. I have my contact info down for a lot of homeless people in our community. A lot of specialists call me up and they're like, "You don't sound like Joseph." I'm like, no, but I have their phones, so I'll let them know when I see them. Fill out government forms, and I get the privilege of attending certain appointments with people because they don't often have family to go with them, or they don't have health literacy to really understand what's going on when they go to appointments. I remember I went with one patient who had got diagnosed with cancer in his throat, and he took me to meet the specialist, and it was just such a confusing process for me even. There's so many doctors coming in and out all saying different things, but the one doctor had said there's like a 95% cure rate with this treatment, but there was like 1 million people, and then as we were leaving, he just kept asking me, "Am I dying?" And I had to be there like, no. I know that was a lot of information, but you're not dying. So I get to be, someone in those really intimate, beautiful spaces. It's a great privilege. So to give you a bigger picture of homelessness in Kitchener-Waterloo, I've got a couple stats, so hang in with me. But all this information came from 2021's PIT count. So every year they do what's called a PIT count, which is point in time. Count all the people who work with homelessness one day. It's in September normally. Just go out with a bunch of forms and just try and find all the homeless people in the shelters, sleeping rough, like everywhere they can, and try and just get a picture for one day of how many homeless people there are, where they're staying, all that kind of stuff. So this is from September 2021's PIT count. So we have about 1,085 people who are experiencing homelessness in our region, which is a lot. About 400 of those people are sleeping rough, which means they don't have a shelter bed or like staying at a friend's house. They're essentially like tenting outside, sleeping on a bench, in their car, sleeping rough, that's what we call it. Now, this number on its own may or may not be surprising to you, I'm not sure, but it was surprising to me because in 2018, it was 333 people. So there has been, I'm sure you've heard of, there's been a huge increase in homelessness, especially since COVID, but that's just a little example of how our numbers have been changing. Of those 1,885 people, about 361 are what we call chronically homeless, which means they have been homeless for at least 6 months out of the last year. So not necessarily consecutively, but have spent at least more than half of the last year homeless. Also, 17% of these individuals are Indigenous and 15% are from another racialized background. So this is just a snapshot of kind of what we're dealing with here in KW. It's hard to say for sure why there's been such an increase. We can say COVID, we can say the housing prices, but it's really just so complex. There's not one easy thing to point it at. Now these are numbers, which are helpful, but these are all people. 1,085 people who have stories and families of some sort, and lives. These are the people I get to see every day and work with. They are funny. They are frustrating. They are interesting. They are stinky sometimes, a little bit angry sometimes, but they're also very charming sometimes and very sweet and very kind. And all of them are resilient and survivors. Almost, I would say, in my experience, my anecdotal experience, every homeless person that I've met or precariously housed, there's also a chunk of that number that would be called precariously housed. So that means that they're like staying at a friend's house. So they're not necessarily sleeping rough, but if their friend kicked them out, they have nowhere to go. So homeless, precariously housed individuals, I would say probably all of them have stories of trauma from childhood, of abuse, of just things that were not their fault and that they are doing their best to deal with the surrounding systems they have. So we try and bring in support so we can help them learn to cope with all the things that they've dealt with. And the choices that they make are complex. It's easy to look at someone who uses drugs and say like, well, you messed your life up there, but it's harder. I wouldn't excuse anyone's behavior, but after hearing some stories of people, I've grown in empathy and compassion and deep understanding for how they got to where they are today. And it's my prayer that we all will continue to look at these people with compassion and empathy. I'll share a quick story. A lot of you know my friend Hope. It's not a real name, but she's one of the people I work with. She came to us when she overdosed and went to hospital and found out she was 5 months pregnant. And she just 180 wanted to get everything in order to raise this child that she loved so much, so instantly. It is still a long journey. It's not been a linear process of her healing and getting things figured out. There's a lot of stuff to get in line when you're homeless and all those pieces. There's a lot of things that have to fall in place. But this week she gave birth to her little baby girl, and she asked me to be there, which was a huge honor and a privilege to be with her in that space. And they're doing well, and a lot of you in the church have donated things. You've prayed for her. You have prayed for me as I feel way over my head. I've never had a baby. I've never been in a delivery room. It can be overwhelming, as a lot of you know. But I've seen, with the right supports, these people can radically change and can radically heal. And ultimately, we need Jesus to do that fully, but to be a small part in that is such an honor and such a privilege. So what does God say about the poor? He says a lot. Jesus himself seemed like he was homeless. He relied on the kindness of strangers as he went from town to town, staying with people, eating in their homes. But he also has a lot of commands about the poor among us. He says we are to distribute wealth and help financially. This is in Leviticus 19 and 23, Deuteronomy 15, and 1 John 3. We're to be kind to them and to uphold justice, as it says in Psalm 140, 82, Proverbs 14 and 19. We're to share the gospel and the good news of Jesus with them, it says in Isaiah 61. And it also, the Bible speaks a lot of our treatment of the poor being tied to our treatment of God and others in general, in Proverbs 19, 29, and Matthew 25. So there is some burden on us, and I know we all have our missions, but this is something that me and Zach and our community is really passionate about. So if you're interested, I've got some ways that you can partner with us and with the greater community at large. Some things everyone can do: you can invite them in, you can feed them, you can talk to them. They're people, they're humans, they have often wild stories if you'll take the time to listen. They're funny. Like I said, they're very funny and really resilient. Those are things you can do. But yeah, engage with them and don't, it's easy to walk by and not want to engage because we don't know where they're at. But even just looking at them as you would any other neighbor and saying hi and introducing yourself goes a long way. If you're looking specific for donations, so the health center, we have a room full of just like donation stuff because so many people walk in and out and they need something. So we always are looking for donations of things, especially as the summer comes. Water, Gatorade, and sunscreen are big things that people are going to be needing as it gets hotter and hotter, as it already has been hotter and hotter. And we also like to keep a stock of baked goods individually packaged in our freezer. So if people need, we can like defrost them and give them like a warm muffin or a little piece of cake or something. So if you and your small group or your DMC group is looking for a fun thing to do one night, you could get together, bake some muffins, package them up, freeze them. Let me know. I'm happy to keep them there and give them out to people who need them. Those are some funner, easier things. Bigger things. If you know of rental units or even just good landlords, a lot of people, there are some individuals we serve who have been homeless for a long time and have really gotten their health under control, gotten their addictions under control, gotten their mental health under control, and just can't afford anything. And so they're stuck in the patterns. And the longer you're stuck in homelessness, the harder it is to stay out of addictions, because it's just, if you're staying in a shelter, everything that's around you is trying to pull you down, right? So getting people out of those situations can be huge for their healing. If you know people with rental units, or you know good landlords who won't take advantage of the population, there's a lot of people too who are precariously housed but paying rent in kind of illegal units, which is also very unfortunate. We see some people who are very much ready to move on, but just financially can't. And so I'm hoping to create, as I continue to work there and partnering with the church, is a community of people who have resources or know of resources that I can call upon when we have someone who's ready to move or who's got things kind of sorted out. Also, along with that, job opportunities. Boredom is a really big barrier and issue for a lot of people experiencing homelessness. When you're just sitting around walking the streets all day, like, a lot of people turn to things they would have never turned to because they just don't have structure, they don't have routine. And a lot of them want to work. So any job opportunities that don't require like a high school diploma necessarily, or something like that. There's sometimes in my job I feel like I can't offer all the things I'd want to because of the professional boundaries I need to maintain, but I love having a church family that can also help fill in the gaps with opening their homes or bringing stuff or whatever they feel they have to offer. I'd love to connect people. That also being said, we meet new, different situations all the time. So like I said, I never thought I'd be with someone giving birth in the hospital like a year ago, but there I was, and a lot of you have really come together with all the things new mothers need. So if there's something that I didn't list that you feel like you have to offer and you just want to let me know, if in case something comes up, please do. I have my contact information up there. You can email Gord. You can come find me if you want to partner in any of these ways, or if you have other ideas, that would be much appreciated. And I did want to take a second to thank you all for who have been praying and who have been donating and who have been encouraging and who do stop and talk to these people or share what you have or opening your homes. It is radical. And the love that we can show, it really says something and makes us stand out. When I brought Hope, I've brought her at this point several loads of stuff from our church. I keep bringing her things. Here, my church friend's dropping this off. She's just so happy and feels so taken care of, and it's things she doesn't have to worry about for the first time in a long time. And that's something you can all give to these people, is give them a moment to just breathe and relax and not have their guard up, as they're so used to. To close, I'd like to read Matthew chapter 25. Verse 40. A lot of you might know this story, this parable. Truly, truly, I say to you, as you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers, you did it to me. So I pray that would be our focus as we pass these people on the street or meet them in other areas of life, that this is Jesus in front of us too. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Brianna. I just wanted to share something quickly with you. So this is being vulnerable here. I used to sometimes walk by people sitting at the side of the street and asking for money with not always a Christ-like attitude. But God had to stop me in my tracks. I went to North Bay when our son Ben was in school up there, and their university college group was putting on a meal for homeless people, and he asked if our daughter and I would come up and cook and bake with them and serve. And so we did do that for the day, and I preferred to stay in the kitchen, but I knew God was telling me that day that I needed to go out and talk to some people because that was a way out of my comfort zone. I would much rather stay in the kitchen. So I'm out serving food, and a woman starts coming through the line. She was very dirty. She was very unkempt. She was wouldn't make eye contact. Just, was carrying a load emotionally and mentally, you could tell, but also physically. And I leaned over to Rudy, and I just kind of blurted out. I said, she kind of looks like my school teacher from high school. And it was in North Bay, and I went to school in high school, but there was no way that was her. So anyways, we go through, we serve the meals, and then I committed to God I would go out and talk to two people. So I went out to this woman, and I sat across from her, and I started asking questions, just asking her story. And she was very guarded, hardly lifted her head up. But at one point, she lifted her head up, and I looked in her eyes, and I won't say her real name, but I said, "Are you Miss Smith?" And suddenly this woman sat up straight, and she smiled, and she looked at me, and she said, "Yes." And I said, "Did you teach home ec at West Ferris High School?" And she said, "Yes." And all I could say was, "What happened?" This woman is on the streets. She's coming to get food for free. And I said, "What happened?" She was teaching. She was a single woman. She was the most put together, beautiful, wonderful teacher, and she taught me home ec. I will never forget her because that was my favorite class. For 3 years, I had her as my teacher. And I couldn't believe it was the same woman. And what happened was there was a powerhouse of a man who was a teacher. He was on the board for the school. He was on the PTA. He was involved in the community. Everybody knew him and loved him. And he was raping her on a regular basis and telling her, "If you ever tell anybody, you will lose your job. You will never teach again." And for a single woman on her own, it was devastating for her to think of that. So 5 years that went on until finally she broke and ended up in a psychiatric hospital. And then lost everything. because he won the court case. He won everything. And she lost her teaching license. Something happened in my heart that day. But you know what? I was able to talk to her about, the unforgiveness and bitterness in her soul was eating her alive. And I was able to talk to her about God's forgiveness. And the kids were giving out free Bibles. And at the end of the night, she walked to me and she said, my life has been a waste. And I just cried as I talked to her, and I said, no way. I said, what did I do today? I just cooked and baked. I said, you taught me, and I had forgotten over the years all the things that she had taught me, how to make souffle. Who knows how to make souffle? All the things she had taught us how to make. And I told her what I did for years and years and years, and catering and helping people by baking and cooking and entertaining people. And I told her about my sisters who all had her, the same thing. And you could just see her spirit lift. At the end of the night, she brought me the Bible and she said, can you write all of that in my Bible? And the part about forgiveness too, about Jesus' forgiveness. So I just beg of you, when you see those people sitting on the streets, please think of my teacher. We don't know their stories. We don't know. Look them in the eyes. Don't think of yourself as better than them. By God's grace, we can be the ones to help them step out of that and into all that God has called them to. Thank you, and thank you, Brianna.
Well, let's take a moment to pray after hearing that. Lord, we know that you in Scripture talk about the poor, and you also talk about the poor in spirit, and we know that in only way that you can move inside of us to change the way we may live or the way we view others in this world is by recognizing that we are poor without you, Lord. And so we ask now that you're changing us. And I just pray over just to see those numbers. Again, for me, is just overwhelming, but also inspiring. And to know that we can actually step in and play a role, be your hands and feet in this world, Jesus. And so only by your strength, your power, can we do that. So I invite you, Spirit, to move in us. Amen. Imagine with me for a moment that we went out to a coffee shop together. Okay, so we walk in together and we get into this room, and there's about 30 people sitting at tables. Okay? And we get in and we notice something's a little strange. It's a little off. There's a feeling in the room that we just sit suddenly uncomfortable. And we're kind of looking around, and we look at each other and go, what's going on in this room? And then imagine with me, we suddenly discover something very dramatic. What we discover is all 30 of those people in the room are contemplating committing suicide. What do you do in that moment? What do we do? What's our action? Some of us may be so overwhelmed we leave. But here's my guess. My guess is that we do something, right? Like we might even just like walk up to one person, ask them, can you tell me your story? Maybe we stand up on like a chair to the whole room and we just proclaim a word of love over the room and that we're here to help and pray and be there. Maybe you run into the streets and you're like, I don't know what to do, and you scream out for help. But my guess is that we're going to do something. And maybe even hearing that story and hearing what Bree said, maybe that's your something from this morning, right? Now imagine with me that something, that room of 30 people was happening on scale in the digital space. About 5 years ago, I found out that here in Canada, over 8,000 people every month go onto Google and search this exact phrase, how to kill yourself. And when I searched it 5 years ago, I looked it up. And the top search result was 7 easy, painless ways to kill yourself. It was a resource on how to do it. If you hear that, like when I heard it, you're like, what do you do with that? Like something has to happen, right? Now, thankfully, a couple weeks after I discovered that, I was at a hackathon. Now, who's heard of a hackathon before? No, okay, a handful maybe. A hackathon is like a retreat for geeks. It's amazing. I love it. It's like one of my favorite things. And what it is in this very short amount of time, people take a problem, and in about 24 hours or 48 hours, we figure out a technology solution to that problem. And we build it in a really short amount of time. And I was like, okay, I'm around a group of people that love solving problems. Okay, what do I do? So I stand up and I'm like, I just found out that 8,000 people in Canada are searching this, and here's the result. I have no idea what to do about this. I can't think of any solution. You know what happened? 4 people gave up a weekend, 2 web developers, a communication manager of a charity, and a guy who was there just setting up chairs happened to be a psychotherapist. They give up their entire weekend. You know what they did? They bought the website howtokillyourself.org. And the whole idea was, instead of when you search that, instead of clicking on the 7 easy, painless ways, they built a website that would come up to the top search, and you would click on it, because the website's howtokillyourself.org. But instead of here's how to do it, it had these simple words at the top. To this day, still has it. You're not alone. About 2 months after this team built that website, one of the web developers on the team calls me, and she's like, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, what's going on, you know? And she goes, last night I was out for coffee with my friend. This is the web developer telling me this story. And she says, I'm sitting down with my friend for coffee, and I'm explaining this website that I was working on. She's explaining like the fonts and the colors, and she's getting into the technical detail of the website. And her friend grabs her arm. This is sort of the way she tells me the story. She grabs her arm, looks her in the eye, and she goes, what is the domain of that website? She says, howtokillyourself.org. The friend just starts to weep. The friend says the night before that, she went online to figure out how to end her life. And she said, I landed on your website that you built, and it saved my life. I'm like, this is a website, guys. This is a website. Because what's happening too right now is that it's really important to understand that in this world, this modern digital world that we're living in, what we're doing with our problems and our secrets is what we used to do is either take it to the grave or tell someone we profoundly trust in person. And now there's a third option, and we're taking those dark secrets and we're taking them to Google in massive numbers. And the question is, what is Google saying, right? And the thing about the structure of Google is what can become the most thing at the top is not necessarily what is the most helpful, but what is the most popular thing. So you could have a 9-year-old build a really fun YouTube video on how to have a great marriage, and it's at the top. And you're like, no 9-year-old should be giving advice on how to have a great marriage, but he's really good with his computer. So he built an amazing video, and everybody's watching it. You see what I'm saying? So this was a moment for me at this hackathon 5 years ago. For me, it was a shift. I couldn't believe what was possible when we look at technology and we view it in a way, and we ask the question, how can we redeem this technology? How can we leverage and create technology in a way that can help people that are hurt, not be hurt, lead them towards conversation towards Jesus Christ? So right around that time in my journey, this is when Faith Tech started, about 5 years ago here in Waterloo. And just before that hackathon, I had met all these people working in tech, and I discovered 2 things. One, a lot of people that are working in tech that love Jesus feel isolated and alone. They go, I love Jesus, but if I proclaim the name of Jesus in my workplace, and my workplace is a context To which proclaiming the name of Jesus is like, oh, dude, what are you doing? You know, you telling me about Jesus right now? It's looked down upon, and this has a whole nother narrative around the culture to which we live in. So there's a sense of isolation and loneliness, but then second is a lot of people that work in tech feel underutilized. Incredibly gifted, talented. I remember early on in Faith Tech, I had coffee with a guy here in Waterloo, and I should have done my research on the guy, you know. He was referred to me as like this big deal, and I was like, oh, come on, yeah, let's just sit down, have some coffee, you know, and he comes over. His name's Chris, and I was like, oh, Chris, you know, how are you involved in church, right? And he's like, I run the PowerPoint. I was like, perfect, okay, great. We got a PowerPoint, clicking, really important. I was like, what's your background? He's like, oh, I invented BlackBerry Messenger. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, that's the first text messaging platform in the world. Okay, you're kind of a genius, aren't you? You know? And suddenly I'm like, I'm on a TV show. I'm looking for the hidden camera. I'm like, this is happening right now. And I said to Chris, I said, really? I said, so what do you do with your church? Like, how are you involved in church? I'm imagining some like amazing church. He's like, I run PowerPoint. I'm like, oh, the inventor of BlackBerry. Come on. And I remember saying to Chris, I was like, could you build, I made it up on the spot. I didn't know what I was talking about. I was like, could you build some sort of like global platform that unites all the missionaries in the world to share all their resources, you know? I was just like, we'll see what he says. Chris looks at me, and then he looks up in the sky for like a minute and a half. And I was like, this is getting awkward. And then I'm looking up, I'm like, is there a bird up there? You know, like, what's he looking at? Ventilation issues? And I'm like, what? So I'm looking up, you know, I'm like, what is going on? And I'm looking again for the cameras. I'm like, this is a joke. I'm being pranked. And a minute and a half of super awkwardness, he looks down, he goes, yeah, I could build that. And I said to Chris, I said, why don't you? You know what he said? And it was a turning point for me. He says, no one's ever told me that's a way I could use my skills and talents to glorify God. He said, I have separated my work and my faith. You know, I show up on Sunday, I hear about how to live for Jesus, and then I go to work, and that's something different. I'll take my money and I'll give it to the church, right? Or I'll serve in other ways that aren't aligned with my skill. But he goes, I feel like I've got this unique talent that God's given me, and I want to figure out a unique way to glorify God through it. So I met all these tech people like Chris, and I'm going, what's going on? Then I meet all these pastors and ministry leaders who are like, technology's like destroying the world, and we don't know what to do, and like everyone's got digital addiction. I remember one pastor said to me, the biggest issue in our church is digital addiction. Really? It's like, yeah. I can't get people off their screens. And even when they think about the screen, what they're doing on the screen is not redemptive. It's leading them down a path of idolatry and darkness rather than seeing it as a way of redemption and leveraging that technology to advance the gospel. I was like, man. So what we did 6 years ago, is we gathered about 35 people that were all trying to figure this stuff out. How do we think about faith and technology? How do we think about our faith in our work? How do we build technology and create technology in a way that could advance the gospel? And 35 people 5 years ago here in Waterloo. Really cool. Right around that time, maybe 6 months later, I quit my job, and I asked a number of you guys even, I was like, okay, I'm going to start this thing. I think we're going to call it Faith Tech. We just bought a house in our neighborhood. My son was just born. Can you give like $100 a month? Or like, what do you got? Can you just like open your pockets right now? I need it. And thankfully, Radiant City and a number of you guys started supporting me in doing this endeavor. Fast forward 5 years, guys, and I'm going to show you a video of one story of impact that God is doing. Fast forward 5 years on this ministry. Now there's 21 communities and cities that are meeting on a monthly basis. We have around 50 products being built right now. So you heard that story, the How to Kill Yourself? There's stories all like that. By the way, we also own howtobuysex.org and howtomurdersomeone.com, howtobuyfentanyl. untitled.com. We bought up, I own some of the worst websites in the world. Like, it is bad. Like, I am just waiting for that phone call from the FBI being like, you own outamurder.com. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, Jesus, no Jesus, So anyway, but we're taking one of the projects for Faith Tech is buying up the world's worst domains and redeeming them for Jesus. Isn't that amazing? There's a team right now in Waterloo building a site around how to buy fentanyl because it's one of the biggest issues that's leading to deaths even. And so we've done all this research, built this website with the idea that when you search it, and a lot of people even now go online to figure out even how to buy fentanyl, how to buy cocaine, how to buy these drugs. And we're going, okay, let's get a site up there that gives you resources and helps you and pulls you away from that. Not amazing, it's beautiful. And so by God's grace now, fast forward, because of what God's been doing here in Waterloo, there's still a community that meets regularly here in Waterloo, building technology to advance the name of Jesus. And now cities in 7, 8, I think we're at 8 countries now. We have a waiting list of 150 cities. So people all around the world are going, okay, I love Jesus. I want to get together with other people that love Jesus too, and that think deeply on technology and how to leverage it and how to build it. And now it's happening all around the world. And there's a team here in Waterloo. As a staff team, we're trying to keep up. Like every week people are like, I want to do this in Berlin. And we're like, we're not ready, And so that's amazing that that's happening. So I wanted to share this video with you just as a closing video to show you some of the stuff God is doing. And just thank you guys too. Many of you guys have been on this journey with us for the last 5 years. And to see it go from something kind of handful of us, I would say, here in Waterloo to now a global movement is quite amazing. It's an amazing, amazing thing to see what God is doing. So let's play that video. Thanks.
I've had the skills, but I didn't really have the opportunities to apply them.
I'm passionate about doing what I can to make the world a better place.
I did not know how to use my skills to achieve something greater than myself.
Faith Tech began because we saw that there were tech people that were highly skilled, not using their gifts. We also had all these organizations that were struggling with how do we use technology in our organization. We have these huge problems, but we don't know how to solve them.
When I heard about Faith Tech, I thought I can use the talent to glorify God. So I thought it was fantastic.
I'm really glad there was Faith Tech. It really helped connect me with organizations like MAF that's making positive change to the world.
MAF is a Christian charity. We want to transform people's lives in developing nations by meeting physical needs. We bring in medicine, we bring in doctors, we bring in food, we medevac people out that are sick to hospitals. Like many organizations, we need to be able to demonstrate impact. Measuring impact is very difficult.
Our donors want to know how their funds have been used to be able to provide change.
The Faith Tech community loves to solve big problems. The solutions we bring are things that most organizations and charities aren't thinking about.
We thought that Faith Tech could help us solve the problem of collecting both quantitative and qualitative data in the field.
And so they presented at our hackathon.
This hackathon was pretty cool. It was combining faith and technology to improve a certain sector of one's life.
Out of that came the idea of creating an ultra simple to use app that would allow the pilots to gather some impact numbers that we could then translate into demonstrating the impact that we're having.
We came up with just a mock user interface. Turned out pretty well. We actually won first place at the hackathon. And that's when Peter came into the picture as a project manager.
I thought, wow, this is a project I would love to work on. At the end of the hackathon, I said, hey, how about we really finish this application off? And that's how we started.
This amazing group of volunteers said, we're pretty passionate about what you guys are doing, and they begin to turn this idea into reality.
We began meeting every single week to discuss our progress, how we can make it better.
I knew it was for the great cause, and I want to make sure that we deliver what we set out to do.
I've continued to work on this project because I feel like I'm contributing to something that's bigger than just the app. I'm adding to something that's gonna be there forever.
I've been impressed with their continued dedication. There'd be lots of moments where it would have been easy to fade and they didn't. And here we are today and we're looking at beta testing the app.
Here at Matthew, we're all about community. We're all about fellowship. It's in our name. So now to see a group of volunteers work on an app to help us do our job better is exactly what we love. We can capture a lot more stories. We can capture how many communities have been reached by the evangelist, how many people did the doctor see, how many people received vaccines. That's really the reason we are here. Together with that, we record our flight data, the hours we've flown, the landings we've done, the places we've visited. Will help us to focus on what we do so that more people will be impacted by the work of MEF.
It's very exciting to take part in such a big project. We all come from really different backgrounds, but we had a common goal in mind that just bonded us all together.
It's been really fun. So after every physical meeting we have, we make sure to grab a bite to eat, and we stay there for 3 hours on end. We just talk about life. Honestly, I've made new friends.
The very fact that a handful of volunteers got together, committed to building this out, is remarkable. And this would have costed tens of thousands of dollars.
I feel proud about the work we have done. The Holy Spirit really gave me a great joy working on in this project.
It's fulfilling every day. We're trying to build something in the name of God. It's like my faith in action.
I've never expected to be working on an app that would be helping people around the world. I mean, I thought my day is going to be just working 9 to 5 in a corporate office all day, but this is better than vacation.
If you're sitting there and you're going, I have these talents, I want to use them in the unique way God's called me to. Wherever you live, there are others in your city that are thinking the same way as you.
Just like the team that built this, that found a way to use their talents and gifts, there are lots and lots of ways that you can get involved in. One of the great things about Faith Tech is that it's looking to connect people with those abilities with organizations that need that type of help.
You have something in mind, you want to make positive change, just go for it. You never know where it's going to take you.
Please talk to James about how you can participate. You say, I'm not a programmer. I don't know anything about websites. There are ways you can participate. At the very least, James and his team would love an army of people praying for what God is doing behind the scenes. So yeah, there's other ways as well. Our son in Wales often quotes St. Benedict, who said, ora et labora, pray and work. We hear that today and we say, what can I do? Sometimes we say, well, I can pray, but can we pray and work? That's what I think God is challenging us with this morning. And I want to speak to that for just the closing moments that we have. I need you to imagine that you have a piece of paper. And I know for the younger crowd, it's like, a piece of paper. I haven't held paper in my hand for a very long time. But imagine a piece of paper and imagine a pen or pencil. Again, what is that? Oh yeah, a writing instrument. But imagine, and you could write down something on there that you could own for a week, just a week. And I've even talked with God about this. We're allowed to suspend the sin of materialism for a moment. I'm not sure he actually said we could do that, but we're going to for a moment. So you can imagine that you could have, and here's what it is, any vehicle that you like. So on that piece of paper, you're writing down, I'm actually seeing smiles behind some of the masks right now, because some of you are saying, a red one. Like, I have no idea what vehicles are called. An aquamarine blue one. Others are saying, like I can see Claire and Eldon saying, yeah, I know the vehicle I would like to drive for a week. And some of you have that in mind. Well, I'll tell you what mine is. A 2022 Lamborghini Countach. It's basically an oversized, very expensive go-kart surrounded by very expensive plastic. And I looked up the price because I thought, well, if Karen would be agreeable, we could sell our house and I could afford one. No, I couldn't. We couldn't afford one. However, if we did sell the house, we could afford Ford's version of it. So Ford did a G64 Heritage edition of their prototype in 64, and that actually is affordable. So that's sitting in your driveway, okay? So imagine that's now sitting in your driveway. You got it for 1 week. But it won't run because it needs something. Does anyone know what it needs?
A bit of fuel.
Yeah. Yeah, it needs some either petrol or some electricity. And you can believe that a huge amount of vision went into bringing that car to your driveway. And a whole bunch of mission ideas and planning and strategy. Like, can you imagine all the behind the scenes engineering that went into that vehicle that is now sitting in your driveway? But guess what? It doesn't work without fuel, without something fueling it. Shadonke Johnson is a man in the church, in the world, that is calling the church to fuel the mission of God and the vision of God. He's from the West African nation of Sierra Leone, and actually Dan referenced him last week but didn't say a whole lot about him. I'm going to say a whole lot more. He's a part of an organization called Renew, and you can look up renew.org, and this is their statement. We're disciples of Jesus from various ethnicities, generations, nations, and communities, and we champion all of Jesus' teachings for disciple-making and disciple-making movements. And when I read that word, disciple-making movements, I went on a search. What are disciple-making movements? What are the characteristics of disciple-making movements? Do we want to be a part of a disciple-making movement? And the answer is a resounding yes. We do. Disciple-making movements, though, are preceded by prayer movements. And this is a statement, a direct quote of Shadonke. He says, the mission of God is fueled by the prayer of the faithful. That is his tagline. He says it everywhere he goes. The mission of God is fueled by the prayer of the faithful. And he says this, what water is to fish, prayer is to disciple-making movements. So I thought, okay, I want to find out if Shadonke really practices what he preaches. What does his prayer life look like? And so I went to a site where he was interviewed, and he speaks at conferences and so on, but this site, he actually elaborated. So here's his daily prayer rhythm. And see if you want to emulate this, okay? So he gets up at 3:30 in the morning and he prays till 6:30 a.m. And then his family joins him from 6:30 to 7:30. And then by 8:30, he's in his church office and he prays for an hour and works away through the day. And then at noon, he stops and gathers others and they pray together for half an hour. And then at the end of the workday, he prays for 10 minutes. Okay, that's just daily. But then weekly, Wednesday is prayer and fast day. So he fasts on Wednesday, and so does his whole church and multiple churches. I'll talk about those in a moment. But the church comes together every Wednesday evening for 2 hours of prayer at the end of the fast. Well, that's daily and weekly. How about monthly? The first 3 days of the month, every month, are prayer and fast days. They call that the Daniel prayer, 3 days of praying and fasting. The last night of every month, the church comes together from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. to pray over the next month. Daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly. In January, the entire church joins together in a 21-day period of focused prayer and fasting. And they also have, special weekends and so on. So, kind of serious about prayer. And honestly, I read that and the Meatloaf song came into my mind. Does anyone know who Meatloaf is or was? I'm not talking about the food. Okay, look at all these 70s, 80s rocker people. So Meatloaf, real name Michael Aday, actually just went from us this year, COVID complications, but he had a song. Sing it with me. I would do anything for love. I would do anything for love. I would do anything for love. But I won't do that. Right? That is literally the song that came into my mind. I won't do that. I won't do that. Do you know why we won't do that? Because we don't believe it. The reason he does that, the reason they do that is they actually believe that prayer fuels the mission of God. They believe that. And here's why they believe it. Since 2005, over 500,000 people have come to faith, and how they measure that is by baptisms. Over 500,000 baptisms in Sierra Leone. Little over 11,000 new churches have been planted, and 82 schools have been started. And all of the schools and all of those churches pause at noon and pray. And all of those churches have those fast days and what I've been talking about. They believe in this so much because they've seen the power of God. And you say, well, is this a prosperity, easy believism kind of church movement? No, it is not. It is a gospel-centered, Jesus, by faith alone, in Christ alone kind of movement. But it's a prayer movement. It's a prayer movement. And I love that Shadonki says this. He says, I don't expect anyone to go from 0 to 100 overnight. This is his big line. Start small and end big. Start small and end big. And so I have borrowed just three ideas from this movement, and I've been implementing them myself. And I would invite us to join in some small way, and maybe these are 3 ways you could begin as well. So 3 ideas. So first of all, not a 21-day fast. You're like, oh, okay. Not even a 3-day fast. Not even a 1-day fast. Could you begin with skipping a meal and praying? Skipping a meal and praying. Now, excuse the weaponry kind of reference, but we are engaged in a spiritual battle. And Shadonki says this: the spiritual intercontinental missile of prayer is praying, fasting, and worshiping. You put praying, fasting, and worshiping together, and your prayers are heard. They have seen witch doctor after witch doctor after witch doctor come to faith. Right around a half of the 500,000 people were previously Muslim. They have gone into villages and towns where the leaders have said, if anyone in this town, they've already been warned, if anyone in this town receives the gospel you're proclaiming, they will be dead by sunrise. They have been warned. Within 24 hours, those same leaders have given their lives to Jesus. These are the stories that are coming out of Sierra Leone right now. This prayer movement that's preceding this powerful disciple-making movement. Skip 1 meal a day and pray. Number 2, add a daily prayer list to the list that you already have. I know we as Christians, we have our prayer lists and so on. Here's a prayer list. So I wanted to see, well, what do they pray? Like, what do they pray over there? Here are the 16 specific areas of focused prayer. Now, you don't have to write them down if you don't want. As I show these to you, when you get to 16, snap a picture. Okay? Or I can send it to you. If you let me know, I would gladly send these to you. Number 1, pray to the Lord of the harvest to send workers into his harvest field. So I've been praying these 16 things every day since I read this. Number 2, pray for open doors to engage the lost. Number 3, pray that God will reveal persons of peace. People who may not know the Lord, but they're welcoming of you and the gospel that you're carrying and inviting you to meet their community. 4, pray for the gatekeepers of the community. The gatekeepers, the leaders of the community. Pray for the protection of the Lord. Pray for miracles pointing to God. Miracles that point to God. Pray for the movement of God in our city, in our neighborhood. Pray for the movement of God. Pray for disciple-making movements around the world. Pray for more partners, not just you praying, but others praying with you and working with you, praying and working. Praying for more boldness. Pray for deliverance, that people will be delivered from some of these addictions and issues that we've been hearing about. Pray against my own personal strongholds. Pray for spiritual breakthroughs as it relates to strongholds of the enemy. And I've listened to other talks where Shadonki has talked about the number 1, 2, and 3 biggest strongholds in North America, he believes, are deception, intellectualism, and materialism. They're strongholds of deception, and they're in the church in a big way. And so to pray as it relates to strongholds of the enemy. Pray for provision because the commission is greater than my resources. Pray for my family. You're saying, oh, I was hoping we get to pray for our family. Yeah, pray for your family. And that's a very thorough, reaching prayer. Pray for the disciples in our care, the church. So these are the 16 things that they pray every day. If you want to take a shot of that, feel free. I'll smile too. All right. So skip one meal a day, not a day, skip one meal. Even start small, once a week, and pray. Add a daily prayer list. And number 3, schedule. What did I say there? Schedule daily prayers. When our gathering started, one of my alarms went off. I have 3 set. It took less than a minute to set these alarms. But 3 alarms. Start small with 3 scheduled alarms. At 10:02 a.m., because it's Luke 10:2. I'm not that bright, okay? Luke 10:2 says, he told them the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. So at 10:02, I pray that God will send out laborers. And I even say, send me. Send me today into your harvest field. And then I have an alarm goes off at 4:30 p.m. because it's Acts 4. I couldn't choose between 29 or 30. I like the round number of 30. Now, Lord, consider their threats and enable your servants to speak your word with great boldness. Stretch out your hand to heal and perform signs and wonders through the name of your holy servant, Jesus. Praying for boldness for the church here in KW. And then at 4:36, so just 6 minutes later, another alarm goes off because that's Colossians 3, 6 and 7. 4, 6 and 7. And pray for us too, Paul says, that God may open a door for our message, so that we may proclaim the mystery of Christ, for which I am in chains. Pray that I may proclaim it clearly as I should. Be wise in the way you act toward outsiders. Make the most of every opportunity. Let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. Disciple-making prayer, a boldness prayer, and an opportunities prayer. That's just a very simple way to start small in order to end big. Why? Because the mission of God is fueled by the prayer of the faithful. I don't know where this lands with you, but I pray that God ruins us with this wonderful call to a life change, to a radical life change of prayer, that we might see God move in our city and in our families. We got to answer the question, though, do we believe that prayer does this? Yeah, Adrian.
Can we get these on the website?
Sorry?
Can we get these on the website?
Okay, we'll consider that. Let's pray. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, what a great day this has been. Thank you for opening our eyes, but more importantly, opening our hearts to what you're doing. Thank you for how you're using your children, God, in this city and around the world. But we're just so grateful for the way that, Lord, your kingdom is bleeding through into this beautiful and broken place that is this world. God, thank you for Jesus alive in your people and through your people, and for these ways of caring and being Jesus with hands and feet to so many people. God, we just pray a blessing over Bree and the work that she's doing at the counseling center and all that goes on there. Father, it is not explicitly always faith rooted, but it is, or at least faith talking about faith, but Lord, it is rooted in faith and it's rooted in your kingdom. And we thank you for that, and we pray that your blessing would be on that, God, and your favor would be on that. And we continue, Lord, daily to pray for James and for his team. Thank you so much, God, that you've raised Faith Tech up in our time to serve this generation, Lord, through your Spirit. Would you protect? Would you provide? Would you empower in even greater ways, Lord, for all these initiatives and all these ideas and all these people who want to participate? God, thank you for the movement of God in the world. Sometimes we don't see it, we don't feel it, we don't know that it's actually happening, but it is. And God, we thank you for what's happening in Sierra Leone, and we say, God, would it happen here in Canada? Father, bring this nation to Jesus. Lord, may we invite that. May we invite you to move in power up and down the streets and neighborhoods of our city. God, thank you that Jesus became flesh and moved into the neighborhood, and we get to embody that as we do as well. So thank you for this day, for giving us a vision of who you are and what you're doing, and we thank you in Christ's name. Amen.